all know that Vhagar is a pretty big dragon from House of the Dragon, but how well does she compare against Drogon or Balerion? Since they were all considered the biggest at one point, why not see who really gets that title? And what does she look like compared to the famous dragons from Middle-earth like Smaug and Ancalagon? Well, let's find out. Let's start with Drogon. He's the last survivor of Daenerys' 3 dragons. Out of all of them, Drogon is known to be the most aggressive and wildest of the bunch. From his appearance, many believe he is the reincarnation of Balerion because of his black scales with red streaks, as well as having a similar personality. Still, Daenerys decided to give him a different name. In addition, his flame is also black with hints of red. However, despite his aggressive and stubborn nature, Drogon is a dragon who is loyal to Daenerys and his siblings. He is fiercely protective of his mother and will rush to her aid if he senses she's in danger. Based on his looks, we can estimate that he has a skull length of around 6.5 feet, and his total length is between 114.5 and 125 feet, making him around half the length of a Boeing 747 jet. With Drogon as the base size, we will move on to Vhagar. She's the last surviving dragon from Aegon's conquest and was ridden by Queen Visenya Targaryen alongside Balerion and Meraxes. After Balerion's death, she officially became the last survivor of the 3 Targaryen dragons who had fought in the conquest. By Dance of the Dragons, she had grown nearly as big as Balerion was during Aegon's conquest, making her the largest and oldest living dragon in Westeros. Her skull was so large that a horse with a rider included were capable of casually riding down her gullet. In addition, her breath was said to be so hot that it could melt a knight's armor and cook him inside. She was also a hardened survivor of 100 battles. After her death, her skull was stored within the Red Keep alongside the other Targaryen dragon skulls. Vhagar's skull was said to be at least twice that of Drogon's, so that would make it at least 13 feet long. Based on the size of her skull and various approximations, we can see that her length also doubles that of Drogon at 246 to 295 feet long. Keep in mind that the biggest she got was comparable to Balerion during the conquest. But what about Balerion then? Just like Vhagar, Balerion was also one of the Targaryen first dragons and was ridden by Aegon the Conqueror during the conquest. He was dubbed the Black Dread for a good reason too. His scales, wings, and even fire were all black. In his prime, his flames were capable of melting steel and stone and could even fuse glass into sand. He was the largest of all the Targaryen dragons since the conquest. In fact, his wingspan was so large that his shadow could block the sun on entire cities when he passed overhead. I suppose that would be another reason why he was called the Black Dread. However, in his old age, he had become sluggish and stopped growing. In the end, he died of old age at more than 200 years old. It was said that his jaws could swallow a hairy mammoth whole. So, based on that fact, we can estimate that his skull was definitely more than 9.8 feet tall, with its length around 29.5 feet long, excluding the horns. While Vhagar managed to almost reach Balerion's size at some point, his peak length at around 492 to 554 feet is still way beyond the she-dragon's size. This measurement makes him much larger than Vhagar in comparison. Now, let's compare those dragons with the dragons from the Middle-earth franchise, starting with Smaug. Known for being the main antagonist of the Hobbit novels, Smaug is the last of the fire drakes in Middle-earth. He is famous for his attack on the Kingdom of Dale and the Lonely Mountain during the Third Age. As a result of the enormous wealth gathered by the dwarves, Smaug was drawn to it. He took control of the mountain, killing many of the dwarves that resided, forcing the rest of them to be evicted from their kingdom. For a long time, the dragon continued to ravage the surrounding countryside and destroyed the neighboring kingdom of Dale as well. From there, he ruled the Lonely Mountain undisputedly for 200 years, lying within its great treasure hoard and ensuring no one entered the mountain to steal from him. This made the surrounding domain become a wasteland that was known to the dwarves and men as the Desolation of Smaug. A weakness he had, though, was a missing scale he had on his chest. This ended up being the end of him when Bard, a descendant of the deceased Lord of Dale, fired a black arrow into the exposed area of his chest. According to the VFX supervisor of the film adaptation, Smaug was twice as long and wide as a Boeing 747. With that fact, we can conclude that his possible length is between 426 and 498.6 feet, making Smaug just a bit smaller than Balerion in size. Before going to the biggest dragons that will shock you, let's see this other dragon. We will now look at the Fire Drake of Gondolin. While there is little known fact about this beast, it is notoriously dubbed as the Beast of Gondolin as it took part in the downfall of the hidden elven city in the First Age. During this stage, Ancalagon and Tuor were confronted by this dragon and were almost trampled in the process. However, Tuor managed to slice off one of its front feet, causing the dragon to sprout flames and scream. During the tantrum, its tail violently lashed around, killing many orcs and elves in the process, so Ancalagon and Tuor used this chance to escape the beast. Based on the information we have about this dragon, it is safe to assume that it was certainly a sizable beast. With the fact that it carried multiple Balrogs that were around 13 to 20 feet on its back as it flew over the walls of Gondolin. In addition, Smaug, who is also a fire drake, is considered the smallest one, so there would probably be a difference in size between the two, putting this dragon at around 492 to 525 feet in length and in competition with the largest dragon of Westeros. The next one is the progenitor of the dragons, Glaurung. He was the first dragon ever to appear in Middle-earth, so he became known as the Father of Dragons. After Morgoth suffered multiple defeats at the hands of the Noldor elves, he realized that his orcs were no match for them, so he began to experiment with ways to provide much deadlier support for his armies, and Glaurung was the result of it. He was officially the first fire-breathing dragon bred in the depths of Angband. Although he was not a winged dragon like the race that would later arise, he was still a force to be reckoned with. However, at the time of his reveal, he was not fully grown and could only display a fraction of his strength, causing him to be driven back by Fingon and his archers. He was contained in Angband for 200 years before he would show up on the battlefield once again during the fourth battle of the Battles of Balerion. This time, he was in full power and led Morgoth's forces with Balrogs at his side to victory against the High Elves of Balerion. In the end, this dragon was slain by Turin using his sword Gurthang at Kabed and Aris. So, back to how large Glaurung was. Although not much information was given about his size, it is believed that he was certainly larger than the Beast of Gondolin at somewhere between 525 and 591 feet in length. He is similar to Balerion in terms of size, and he is just a little bigger. And finally, we will move on to a legend, Ancalagon the Black. This was a dragon that was considered the greatest among all winged dragons. He was created by Morgoth after facing final defeat from the Valar in the First Age, so he unleashed his final weapon of mass destruction, a fleet of fire drakes that were led by Ancalagon. Their coming was said to be accompanied by great thunder, lightning, and a tempest of fire. This assault was so terrible that the armies of the Valar were driven back from the gates of Angband. However, Erendil and his blessed ship Vingelit, along with a myriad of eagles of Manwë, showed up to the scene. They dueled with Ancalagon and the other dragons for an entire day, and Erendil emerged victorious. In the end, the death of Ancalagon marked the end of Morgoth's final resistance. While the exact size of Ancalagon is debatable, there is no doubt that he was an absolute titan. His size was supposedly as big as 3 mountains, and he was so large that he crushed the 3 peaks of Thangorodrim when he was slain. So this fact effortlessly makes this colossal beast far much larger than the other dragons we've looked at, putting him in the size range of at least 3,280 feet in length. Comparing him with Vhagar, we can say that he's about 10 times bigger. That's quite gross. According to the knowledge we have, we can now stack all the information we have together. Drogon will be the smallest on the list at around 112 to 125 feet, following is Vhagar at around 246 to 295 feet. Then there's Smaug from Middle-earth at around 427 to 498.6 feet. After that, we have Balerion, which measures about 492 to 525 feet. Next is the Fire Drake of Gondolin, which ties at the same measurement as Balerion. Then there's Glaurung, who is a bit larger than both of them and measures somewhere between 525 and 590 feet. Finally, there's Ancalagon the Black, who is most likely around 3,280 feet long. There's also a chance that this measurement is longer though. So, that is it for this video about dragons. Who is your favorite? Who do you think would win in a fight? Feel free to comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Also, subscribe to the channel so you can keep getting more content like this. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!